One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying incandescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way on the people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire.
All right, we are back and we are live. Feet to the Fire. I'm your host, James, off the Yanchek, the Black Knights of Talk Radio. Broadcasting live through the Spreaker system, shortly to be uploaded when I'm done to YouTube. And let's not forget BitChute, which will be the place to go when YouTube decides to throw everybody out. So. Also, I'm on Gab, which is a kind of a hybrid from Facebook / Twitter. It's more of a Twitter, but you can use it as many things, even a chat room and all kinds of stuff. It's open source, no censorship. You can find me there at F2F would be the name to look up. I did start a group on Gab, I should say, but I'm not too proficient at it yet to know how to invite people in and whatnot. But my sister is way ahead of the curve on that, and she will guide me. I didn't think I was going to be doing a little talk today. Not that time would have stood still or anything, but I was, after last week, I go through this whole hoopla about not worrying about the flu. And I said, I think my quote was, and of course, God loves to dole out some humble pie every so often. In my case, it makes it easy. It's easy for him if there's anything hard for God. But I said, I'm not worried about getting any flu, let alone the COVID-19 flu. And of course, during the week, I got a flu. Now, it wasn't. Now, I got to say, it got me thinking a little bit because I do deal almost daily with shipping containers that come from China. And when I open it up, I'm the first guy to open that container up since they closed it back in China. So when I open it up and breathe in, so I start getting flu symptoms. I mean, I could tell when I'm sick. I mean, I'm sure everybody can, but there's like an oncoming thing. I can feel it coming on, and I go, oh, I'm getting sick. And then I started thinking, I just literally, in the last 2 days before this, opened up containers from China. So I'm going, uh-oh, big mouth. But it settled in my intestine. While I did feel flu-like symptoms, aches, I didn't have much of a sneezing, not much of a scratchy throat. it started out a little bit, but it quickly went down into my intestines where I had diarrhea quite profusely and profoundly. So I ended up doing like I said in the show. I didn't use the zapper. I didn't need to, but I took the wellness pills by Wellness Source Natural. I mean, there's other ones you can if you just look at the ingredients. Excuse me. Took the horse pills 3 times a day, loaded up on the, what's it called now? Olive leaf extract. Vitamin C is in the wellness pills, so I didn't need to do that. And I did drink fluid because I had to have some fluid left in me. And I kind of waited it out. And I ended up getting better. This was on Thursday, I think, is when it hit me. Thursday night. When I got up Friday morning, I was considering calling in sick. And at that time, I'm thinking of this, COVID-19, going like, well, if I got it, I better call in sick. But I'm going, no, but I really don't. I mean, it's not that bad. And I did feel better the next day after taking the pills when I came home, and I went to bed early and so on. So I took the, one of the few over-the-counter things I take, the Dayquil or whatever, but the generic version of it. And I got through the day, and I, went to bed. I felt lousy again at night, and, I pretty much moped around the house on Saturday. I literally didn't do anything. And, I got better, and, today I'm better. I'm going to work tomorrow, but I just thought it was like, there you go. Yeah, I'm not going to get no sick. I'm not going to do nothing about it. And then all of a sudden, here I am. Well, there we go. So I'm back with this now. I'm not saying anything like I'm not making fun or poking at this at all. I mean, people are getting sick and they are dying and stuff. So I'm not trying to make light of any of this. I was just I'm making light of myself by saying, showing that we all are actually vulnerable. The only thing that I'm really worried about in terms of the vulnerability is, again, like I said last week, the reaction of what people are going to do with it when they do. And Milton is in the chat room. Coronavirus is supposed to have an 8-day incubation period. Is that incubation, as I understand it, is before it shows symptoms. So since I showed symptoms, then you'd have to go back 8 days, up to, but it's, I believe it's like 2 to 8 days or 2, there's like this, you can get it immediately or depending. So I obviously have gotten better. I also, when I'm sitting there I literally did nothing on Saturday. So I was sitting around thinking about the book, The Stand. I saw the movie, and when I read the book, I used the characters in the movie, but the book is way more obviously extensive because they only had, even though it was a miniseries at the time, and the book is huge. So I started thinking about the flu in there, and it's not funny. I'm laughing, not laughing. It's the reaction you have when you're kind of like humbled and at the same time, I don't know. It's kind of trying to make it lighter, but since we did the show last week, the numbers have went up 1,000, about a little more than 1,000. Of course, we all know that these are the numbers that are reported. Only God knows what is the actual number. See, we got some. See if this works out here. Got a link set in there. Here we go. A person can carry and transmit COVID-19 without showing symptoms, scientists confirm. Yeah. Right, I knew that. I thought since I was showing symptoms, and I did keep myself in the house, I thought that I was not adding to the thing. But, and I don't think I had COVID-19. I definitely had an intestinal flu, as evident by the and diarrhea. Oh, where did it go? A link. That's pretty weird. I've never seen that happen before. Somebody came in, posted a link, and now they're gone from the chat room. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the Spreaker's software, but how does that work? Do they take themselves away? I don't know. Unless they're just bopping in. That's because of the heading. But I started thinking about this. But, also, I did do what I said I was going to do, and it did work. I do have a decent immune system, I will say. I took a kind of a beating when I was in the hospital a couple years ago when they loaded me up with stuff. But I think it got back on track. And so whenever I usually do get a cold or flu or something, I start to feel it on, I will feel it. I will feel sick. I will take these supplements, and I will drink water and go to bed early and long. And it usually seems to help out. And it's usually short. I mean, normally they talk about the symptoms. I mean, you're being 7 days, you have the virus before it kicks in. But I seem to tend to bounce back faster. So I take that as a blessing, not as any kind of thing that anything to do with me. But back to the numbers. Now, I realize this is the numbers are almost arbitrary in that nobody really knows how many, but you got to work with something. And you can, as long as the numbers are consistent in where they're from, they can show raising and lowering and so forth, because the numbers may not be inclusive, but if they're the same numbers, you can see up and down, and you can get some kind of reference point from it, even though it doesn't have the exact numbers, as long as they're in ratio to the exact, which, of course, we also don't know. So I'm looking at the says according to the breakdown of the people who are currently infected. That's interesting. Active cases currently infected. Oh, they're breaking it down. 78% of them are mild, 22% critical. Have the active cases. Oh, I see. That 78 is the current number of cases. Gotcha. So there's 52,000 active, 26,000 closed. Of the 26,000, 23,000 got better, 91%. 2,500, 9% died. And so, I mean, I understand that, and the graph is still rising, so it hasn't plateaued yet. I understand that there are people here. Let me back up. When I follow people on the internet, some people are getting data from everything from Alex Jones, headlines with a voice. A lot of people have good information, but the actual format of their system is dramatic. It seems that you have to have drama in order to get people to click and listen. And clicking, listening, or clicking and watching is the income. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's just the reality of it. So one of the problems that it's getting old with me is everything's dramatic. You have people coming in and saying, I remember listening to Alex Jones, and they had, now I'm not going to remember his name now because I just saw his face. Gosh. It'll come back to me. Big in the 70s, ran for LaRouche. He was on Alex Jones talking about Barack Obama has to get taken out of office before he does this. You had another face I'm seeing. I can't think of his name. The FBI, CAA guy, Steve Pachinik, was on there. You have to get Barack Obama out. Has to be taken out immediately, or this, that, thing. And he finished his. While he did damage, he still finished his service. None of the things that they were talking about happened, and so you keep having this drama not happening. You get basically kind of two different things. You get people who get addicted into it, and they're waiting to hear the next drama. And there's almost a letdown when the bad thing doesn't happen. I mean, cue in the Planet X people. Every time it's shown it's not there, they know it's coming. And when the more information comes out, boom, here comes the wave of information. So you have the people who get addicted to that, and then you have the people who get kind of turned out from it, burned out, turned out from it. And what you end up doing is sterilizing the internet from being able to get out good data. You have to be immune to these two aspects in order to be able to glean through the data on the internet. I'm not doing too well with the second one. I'm getting kind of burned out from this stuff. I keep hearing about all this is the most important show I've ever done type stuff. And it used to be that the information was only negative burning out. And now there's positive burnout. It seems that you're going to get Trump's going to save everybody and Trump's going to ruin everybody. It seems to be the two paradigms now. And that takes up the bulk of the time. And then you have people inside who will be cynics on all ends. And that's not the answer either. So it's getting to the point where the internet is kind of being sterilized from being effective, unless you take care to not get caught in those traps, which, I'm not sitting there like I'm some kind of guy preaching going, well, you should do what I do. I fall in those traps. Not necessarily anymore the falling in the sucking along, getting sucked into the drama side. But I'm getting kind of tired of it. So the virus is serious. People are dying. And as I mentioned last week, the main problem I see with it is the use of how they're handling it in China in terms of barring them into buildings, which all it does is everybody in the building gets it, and you leave it up to fate whether they die or not. So the thing I'm looking at here is what are they going to do about it? I am seeing things like the potential. I'm seeing the potential. Let me state that potential of using this event to interfere with elections. Let me just give you a scenario. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but a lot of times what I do is I'll come up with a scenario that has the data points in it, and the scenario is a possible consequence. Not saying it is. Just saying that it's possible. History has shown that the Democratic Party does not like. Hey, Kelvin, he made it to the chat. Good. By the way, if you are listening on your phone, you can participate in the chat on Spreaker on your phone. Actually, it's a pretty nice, other than not being video, which I don't know if you guys really need to see me talk all the time, but the Spreaker system is pretty nice. It runs on your phone, your tablet, and you can join in the chat room. All you have to do is join them, but it's free. And then you can keep track of podcasts you fall in there, and you can save them, and then you can be, if you want to, you can be notified when a new one comes. It's a pretty nice system, I think, But now, of course, I went off on track. Oh, scenario. So I tend to build a scenario to explain the problem, but don't attach yourself to the scenario. It's just a way of laying out the situation. So we have this coronavirus, the COVID-19 thing going on. People, it is happening and so on. So how can it be used to further plans by the ne'er-do-wells? So we do know that Bernie is not a favorite of the mainstream left. You might call him almost the Trump of the left in a very loose way, that he's not, Trump was an independent, went to Republican. Bernie was an independent, went to Democrat. And there's a good there's a certain population in the Democrat area that follows him. Trump I had a lot of people following him, and the Republicans, even though they were never Trumpers. You got the kind of loose scenario here. But they don't want Bernie, it appears. Apparently it was pretty obvious they didn't want him last time. There seems to be hit pieces on him in the mainstream, which kind of tells you what they want. So how do you use the virus in terms of the primaries? Well, you can say when you get to the actual convention, primary numbers are down because people couldn't vote because they were sick or afraid to go out in public and get sick. So we got to throw out the primary results and let's have our own open convention, and then they pick who they want. That's an example. If you want to, I find it hard to believe that it'll move into November, but if this kind of thing does move into November, I think the primary is in April or May, which you could still get some legs on this till then. You could even say the election was problematic. They're going to try and do whatever they can and get Trump off. But and then you have the ideas of the containers are being held over in China. I read some stories on that. They're holding millions. The numbers are the range is wild between thousands to millions of containers, and their ships fully loaded in the dock. And they're waiting for a time frame for if there is any virus in these containers, they would be dead in 14 days or whatever it is. So they're holding all these containers off until the magic time when they can start sending them. It means all the people in the ships would have either got it by then, they would either be sick, all this stuff would have burned itself out. Like I guess like a fire break, so to speak. So with the containers being gone, it only goes to show a lot of the stuff that's in China, they have in the world is going to suffer. We've gotten very efficient in stores where the stores used to hold a lot more in the background. In the back, there was a whole warehouse of stuff in the back that was able to keep the store going. Now they got to get 3 deliveries a week. And if they miss, after a couple deliveries, there's nothing on the shelf anymore. And that's not what people on a run. That's just normal consumption. They don't have the Japanese model of letting the vendor be the warehouse rather than you have the warehouse. You let the vendor have the warehouse and you tell them when they want product. Give us a brief example of this. Walgreens, I was delivering years ago. I think it was a whole 53-footer of tissue, a bathroom tissue. And when I backed in the door, they had me just sit there for about 8 hours while they were picking loads. They used the truck as a warehouse for the tissue. So when I was near done, they pulled the rest out. Somebody else was going to come in that slot or a different slot, but another tissue truck was coming, and then they would do that, which I protested greatly about, using me as a warehouse. But these are the models that Japan has come up and has been embraced in the West, especially with Reagan taxing inventory. You have these ideas. So if the containers don't come in, they don't get delivered on the items that are in the containers. Now they're gone because there's no other options. Or even though there are options, you have other places you can go. You can't really go into Asia because the whole COVID-19 covers like all of Asia. And so the infrastructure isn't set up like, oh, okay, I can order these from Brazil or whatever and have it come here. It's not that simple. It's a complicated system and how you do it. Once the pipeline is flowing from Brazil, that's one thing. But getting it flowing from Brazil, and I just picked that out of the air, that's another thing. So what I see this being used is something for example, to excuse the numbers in voters. Bernie's people are crazy, so they braved the risk of the virus, whereas other clear-headed people didn't. We can't count this stuff and then have your own convention. And then you have the economic problems that could come from this. And plus, we have this artificial stock market anyway that everyone's cheering on. I mean, Trump's cheering about it, the record highs and all that. This is all it's all like based on faith, based on belief. We believe the stock is worth a lot. We're going to pay for it. But the actual evidence shows it isn't, but we're going to believe that that number is going to catch up with it. And it goes way out past what it's really worth. And at some point, when something happens, people start to pull in their stock. And, okay, well, I made a lot of money on this stock. I'll sell it. Me and everyone else. And then the stock plummets. And since we're using computers, it can plummet in milliseconds. So that is concerning. It's our fault. It's our fault that's happening because when I say our, I'm meaning the system in the United States. I mean, not me personally, but collectively, it's the United States' fault for allowing the outsourcing of stuff. We do it in our own country. We have you've heard about the blight on broccoli or something or romaine lettuce, and everybody gets sick all over the country because 80% of the lettuce comes from 2 farms in California, big giant corporate farms, and so one of them gets infected. They have to recall it. Well, we're talking a huge portion of all the stuff is recalled. So it's our own fault because you would think you would go to a local area. Now I know in wintertime you got to go. You have to get fruits and vegetables from the South America, Central America, California. I understand that, but it's just an example of how we're outsourcing even in our own country, let alone going to other countries, in particular China. China, who's worked hard to give the best value in terms of cost for the item, which allowed people to lower the prices or not raise them, however you want to look at it. And therefore, people bought their product because it was a better value. And really, the value is based on slave and near slave labor in China. Because if you think about it, how are you going to ship things across the other side of the world and have it be cheaper than something that can be made a state away? Now, I also want to put down there were some rumors that China did buy steak in some meat places because they wanted to get a flow of pork in particular, and I can't think of the name of the Smithtown, Town, some kind of meat company, and the rumors on the internet was that they were going to ship the meat, live pork, over to China to be slaughtered and slipped back. Which I heard that I was just like, that's ridiculous. The cost to ship a live animal to China, to butcher it cheaply and send it back is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. What more likely happened is they wanted to get a priority line of meat for themselves so that they can export to China at a discount because they're their own company. You're exporting it to yourself, so to speak, so you can keep the cost low. I worked picking up things from a company called Ecolab, and here we are. Everything's imported from China, right? So here they are shipping plastic containers, empty little plastic dispensers for like hand soap. They're shipping them to China, which could make it for a fraction of what they probably made it here. And so it was kind of amazing to me. But to Ecolab, what they have done is they're a huge global conglomerate. In my analysis of it, they're probably doing is they're keeping it in-house. So while they could outsource to another company in China to make the product, because they make the chemicals, the soaps and cleaning stuff, that's their gig. And so rather than outsourcing to a place in China, they keep it in the family. So they ship it around a whole world. I mean, they have them in North America, South America, Europe, China, Japan, everywhere. So you could see how, okay, they're keeping it in-house. Well, this is what this company wants. They wanted to buy Johnson's Meats or whatever it was called, Smithtown. I can't remember the name. You see it in the stores. It's common. They bought into that because they wanted to get some pork to China, keep it in the house. But the salacious aspects of it is oh, they're going to buy it and they're going to, take away jobs, and then we're going to get tainted meat from China. No, it's that if you think about the logistics of it, most of this stuff can be ruled out just in a logical analysis, not even having like sworn affidavits to it. So another thing I wanted to mention, and I might have mentioned this before, and I don't want to keep sounding redundant, but when I'm doing the show in the moment, things come to mind and I say it, and I might have said it already, but I don't have like this little marker that says, no, you said that on, September 13th. But it may also beg to be repeated. Years ago, I remember listening to the radio, a big deal about these. And I talked to somebody about that this week sometime. Maybe that's what I'm remembering. And I'm thinking like I might have said this already. But I was talking to somebody about their big story, pictures and everything about the coffin liners that FEMA was going to use to bury all these mass deaths. And they had pictures of the coffin liners stacked up. And I saw some of the pictures that were a little farther out, and I went, I think I know that place. Because the place was in Georgia. And at the time, I was traveling back and forth to Georgia every week. And sure enough, and I think it was in, I don't know if it was Georgia or South Carolina, because it was in Georgia, but I went through both, so it doesn't matter. I think I remember that place. And so I went and I actually found it. Now, I think I took pictures, or maybe I didn't have, I couldn't stop because I was driving, but I remembered the thing on it. And I went and did some work on it, and I can't remember if I researched on the company, but the story that I got back was that I'm remembering anyway from the bottom, because I tend to remember bottom lines, not the whole process. That's how my memory works, for better or for worse. I remember the principle, not the memorized details. I remember the result, the bottom line, not how I got there. I have to recreate it. So what it was a company went out of business who were making these things, and somebody bought them, like on a bankruptcy or whatever, and we're stocking them and selling them as needed. Now, the reason why they have coffin liners, we don't have that in Illinois. There is no coffin liners like that. There are ABS coffin liners. And I shouldn't say vault liners. I said coffin liners. Grave vault liners. Not the coffin liners, grave vault liners. You put the coffin inside this thing. It's ABS plastic. I don't remember seeing any tops for them, which was another queer thing. If they were going to have these, they were going to dump these bodies in there. There's no top for it. So what do they do? And why would they bother to do that if they just had these coffin vault liners? Just throw them in the vault. Just throw them in the ground. If you're going to have that many people, why would you even bother with it? So, as I logically think about it, there was problems with it. But I also learned from a completely different story about someone else that in South Carolina, in Georgia, the water tables are very high. So when they bury people in the ground, it ends up the body gets completely soaked, and the coffin gets totally soaked, and it rots, even though it's been treated with. So what they do is they put the coffin, they bury very shallow. If you see graves down in Georgia, a lot of times you'll see a graveyard. It will be stones, not grass, and you'll see these square regions, plots, if you will. And what they do is they put the coffin, the vault liner in the ground. They put the casket in there and a top on it, and it keeps the water from rising up from underneath and contaminating the coffin in the body. In Illinois, they use cement, a cement vault with a cement top on it that closes on top to keep the body. They can still leak through it because cement is porous, and if it goes up and all that. So, but that's how things are here. There, because of the high water tables, they they use these coffin liners, ABS plastic, which will stop the water from seeping up into it. There. I mean, so when you look into it, it's gone. Another internet story was that it had all these trains that were lined up, their car trains, that were going to supposedly carry people. They were going to strap them to the sides. There's straps inside. People had pictures inside of them, and they had straps. There were two tiers, and they were saying they were going to put the people in them and strap them to the sides and carry them across the country. And again, thinking on it logically and logistically, the United States is not set up well for trains. Europe, yeah, there's trains everywhere in Europe. In the United States, it's highways. So to ship the people alive, presumably being tethered or strapped to the side, so you're going to stand the whole way with your hands tied to the side across the United States. And when you start putting in those terms, it gets ridiculous. But when I saw pictures of it, I knew exactly what they were. Those are car carriers. The two tiers, they drive the cars up. Their straps used in strapping the car around the wheel down to the ground. And where they were in Indiana, where people were complaining about them, that's why it got on the news. It probably hit Alex Jones. It's like the coffin liners. The problem is that people were complaining on them. What happened is there was car sales were down. So they had all these car carriers, and they were storing them in this area in Indiana on these lines, the seldom used lines. So that's why they were there. And as you could, since this is, a decade or so old, that they didn't use them to bring people across the country. And if you want to go, Hitler did bust people out of Germany. A lot of them, they wanted to bust out, literally bust, put them on a train and get rid of them. And then they put them into camps and all this other stuff outside of Germany. But if you go into something like China, Mao Zedong, when they did their Cultural Revolution and their cleansing, all they did was dig a hole, shoot them, and put them in a hole. That was it. Throw them in the river. The river was clogged at one point with bodies because of the sheer volume of murders that were going on. Communist country, by the way, for those who are looking at communism as some kind of a savior. If I can continue to segue on this stream of consciousness, all forms of government, communist, capitalism, all this, there's no good form, like in and of itself, it stops corruption. All government forms attract corruption. They attract psychopaths. They attract them because they want power, and they want power to exercise power, not have power, to have it and exercise it. The wielding of the power is the joy, not having the power. So, what makes communism and socialism bad is it's easier to focus the power up in a pyramid, and you attract the psychopaths upward. Hitler did it. All his henchmen and all that, all psychopaths, they attracted to the absolute power of a dictator, and they could work underneath him in the dictator's name and do all the terrible things they were doing. So when you have the communism, it's never communism. It's not like people getting together and making decisions on themselves or whatever. It's infiltrated by totalitarianism, which then has an easier time since the state is the center. The state is the rule, not the people the rule. The state is the rule. And so it makes a great structure for the totalitarian takeover. It's harder in a capitalist system, though obviously open your eyes and look around. We have corruption everywhere. The problem is everyone is fighting for that pie. There's no party that has the authority to prevent you from getting the pie. And so everybody wants a piece of the pie, and they're all kind of fighting each other, making deals with each other, on each other. So the only advantage, I think, to capitalism would be that you have a lot of people self-policing, if nothing else, for their own greed. And now when you have a center-based world, statism, as we have now, where the state seems to be the supreme law, you attract the psychopaths up to the state. They're all appointed. in positions. You want to have a job. You have to go along with the party in the system. And you have at this point, you have them both. You have the capitalist people out making widgets and what have you, and you have the people inside the government getting paid off, passing laws and asserting power and whatever. I mean, what they're doing in California is ridiculous. Trump goes out there and says he goes to Bakersfield. He goes out and says he wants to, divert the water to the crops so they can grow crops. I mean, it's like, that sounds like a no-brainer. But for some reason, the powers that be don't want that. They're using the excuse of helping certain water creatures. This is the excuse for doing it. They don't trim the forest fire stuff. They don't trim the land, and because of some critters that are living in the tinder that's forming at the bottom of the. These are the excuses, but the reality is, for some reason, is it makes forest fires and droughts. I mean, that's the goal, and they got the goal. So when Trump comes in and goes, "No, we're going to send water here," it's ridiculous. Well, all the people who are actually doing the work out in the fields and in related businesses are going to see this as being so blessedly obvious they should do it. And that's why the support comes. Now, my question would be, why would somebody want to do this to affect, to literally drown out their own farmers? And I don't really have a good answer. I mean, I look at things logistically, logically, non-contradictively. And if you go into South Africa, a similar event is happening under the reverse apartheidism, where you have the African National Congress and whatnot advocating, and in many places actually taking over farms from white families to distribute them to black families. Now, in forgetting the white and black, that's, again, we're talking, when you think of power, what's the excuse for those people to be in power and to wield power causing trouble, causing problems? That's the excuse, all right? That's the goal, is to cause the wield power, whatever the excuse is what they use. The problem is, it's happened in other countries. I have read that what happens is that they give the land to the people who don't know how to farm it, regardless of color. It's not a color thing. It's like, I don't know, here, you're a farmer. What? What do I do? And so what ends up happening is these other countries, I want to say it's like, I don't know, a year, I don't remember. One of the neighboring countries, they had this, and then all of a sudden they have farm failure because people don't know how to farm, and they have major droughts and famines, pestilence, and all this. So you think, why would they want to do that? Well, again, you have to go back to evil. You go back to Satan. Satan's goal is to destroy mankind for whatever reason. I presume to show God that he was wrong in being favored to him. Or I don't know. You can come up with a scenario, but the evidence is showing that the evil is destroying the system that helps people, and it enslaves them and ends up, killing them. That's what happens. Why it happens is you have to turn to the evil spirit that is blowing winds throughout the world to do that kind of thing. And when you understand that, the goal is to destroy humanity, well, how come humans would destroy humanity? Well, they're not. They're being told, here, you can have your own land, or here you can have positions of power, or you don't have to work, we'll give you money. And they go, okay, and they go along with it, and they aid and abet the destruction of the system that keeps everything working because of the short-sightedness of their own greed. Well, the same happens all the way up the scale. The people at the top, a lot of people think like, well, we can always, if you're rich enough, your mentality is, well, worst comes to worst, I can go on my own ship and live on the rest of my life out in the ocean, or go underground, or I don't know, fly to the moon, or whatever. Because it's all about themselves. It's all about their own thing, number one of which is wielding power. I'm trying to look here. There's something popping out here that I could address. Let me look to my feed here. A couple of stories. So I think cycling back to the beginning, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that I don't have COVID-19. I had something, but it was kind of ironic after my little thing about how I'm not worried about getting flu. I ended up getting flu. I've got some articles about Trump and Stone and all this stuff. One of the problems, they're asking Trump, well, what are you going to do about Stone? And he's downplaying it. Now, at one point you go like, well, that's kind of, he's downplaying it, like almost like he's throwing him under the bus. And how I read it, personally, looking at it, is that Trump is waiting to see what happens. I mean, he's always can pardon him, but he would rather have it work its way out. And he said, I'd rather see it work its way out. I mean, these are some of the words he said in the latest speeches. I'd rather have them work its way out. And he's not keeping nose in there. He's kind of watching from a distance because he would rather have it play out, because everything he touches is going to be used to try and if he pardons Stone now, they'll be up for impeachment of abuse of power, even though I was looking at the stats for pardon. Now, granted, Trump's only been in office 3 years, but Barack Obama has the most pardons of all by far, with 1,977 in 8 years. A lot of them being in the end of his. I mean, I'd like to see the numbers. Probably most of them are in his last month, but. And Trump is being yelled at for pardoning criminals when between Obama and Clinton both definitely pardon criminals. So it's really, I think what is happening is he wants to see things play out. You don't step in with the ultimate power in the beginning. It's a last resort. So my guess is that, Trump would pardon him if right now he's going for another trial. He's going to get rid of the judge who has so many problems that if we'd have an ounce of any kind of independent jurisprudence, they would be gone. She'd be gone, or at least be a new trial. So all those things are happening. Now, Stone is no angel. And even though he's 70 years old, I mean, the guy's been around. He's swung some political punches. He's taken some political punches. So it's not like this guy's a kindergarten teacher and they're picking on him. But it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve what happened. So I'm not saying he deserves what happened to it because of things he did in the past. No, that's not right either. And I'm not saying he even did bad things in the past. It's just that when you're in the political arena, there's heavy stakes here. And being a Trump supporter only just makes it 80 times worse. So speaking of that, I was looking around at houses in our neighborhood, what they were going for and stuff. And I looked at Google Street of, going down to the addresses around in the houses, and I went, let me look at mine. And I went down, and sure enough, Google Street went down our street and took a picture of the house. And there's a big Trump sticker on the Trump flag on the garage. Plus, Lucinda's looking out the door. You can't really tell it's her. It actually looks more like a kid than it is a woman, but probably saw the guy, what's this thing doing? Going slow down the street, And but our address doesn't line up, so people can't find. I mean, no, I don't have my address on the internet anyway, but I mean, people can't find it out. But it was just kind of interesting. There was a 5 minutes of nothing. Well, I do like Tucker Carlson. I think he can't say anything he wants, but he says a lot of things. And he has a great little soliloquy here about people in charge squandering a great nation, and he took to task everybody for this. I do like that. I'm looking in the list here for things. I haven't been too busy posting stuff because of course, you think of being ill, I would have plenty of time, but I don't know. I wasn't feeling well. Last thing I wanted to read was all kinds of junk. All right, I'm looking here. Let me look in the chat room. I see Kelvin's been busy typing. Certainly, there could be a back way to disrupt the economy and fulfill the depopulation agenda. All plausible scenarios should be considered and prepared for within reason so as to not panic when severe conditions arise. Yeah, we're looking. I know he's been doing preparations to store preserve food. I have actually gotten more serious about that. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting he says this. The model of the pre-tribulation rapture weakens faith in times of tribulation, hence expecting a post-trib steals the soul for troubled times. And I would add that, I would take that whole model he just said and say, let me change this. The model for Q and having the faith, having the believing in the Q thing, weakens the faith in times of tribulation. So if the Q stuff doesn't happen, now you're weakened in the times of a post-Q situation, hence expecting that things are going to go bad and be prepared will be, that's my whole problem with the Q stuff. They're not giving me anything to work with other than words. And if you believe in those words, I talked to a lady I known years ago, who's a big shot kind of a publicity lawyer for a company, and I was talking about these times coming and so forth, and she said, I could never survive in that. I don't worry about it because if it ever happens, I'll just kill myself. And that's how she got her peace. Is that she just all, I'm not going to worry about things like that because they won't happen. If they do, I'll just kill myself. And so it is you might think that's not correlative, but people who think Jesus is going to take them out of here before he gets bad, I don't have to worry about it because Jesus is going to take me out. I mean, it's kind of actually similar. When you look at the Old Testament. Various people, Isaiah and others, I mean, they had a pretty rough time. God protected them, but it wasn't exactly a picnic. But dispensationalism has had the effect of saying, well, it's different times, different dispensations of God. This is our time. We're going to get yanked out of here. Everything will be fine. Now, I would love it to happen, and I got no problem with it happening. But as I study the Bible myself, doing it in terms of chronologically and making Jesus the head of the prophecy formula, it doesn't seem to be that way. Yeah, but the objective accused take personal responsibility and conduct research and draw conclusions. Well, let's just say that is Q's objective. What the reality of it is I see people who are taking Q's stuff and being able to create things with it that other people take solace in and gird themselves up in rather than doing it. So people aren't taking personal responsibility. There are those who are using Q to become internet stars, and people are listening to them and therefore are not doing it. Opium, yeah. Now, this guy, Kelvin, he's doing stuff about it. He's getting ready. So, I mean, I'm not talking to him. And, again, Q, whether it be pre-trib rapture or Q, I would love it all to work out. So I'm not sitting here doom and glooming here. I'm going like, you got to have plan B just in case here. Because, for example, Jesus has been coming for a long time. I mean, the disciples back in the day were looking for a return. They didn't have some kind of elaborate stuff saying, well, first Israel has become a nation and so many generations after that. They didn't have any of that. They just had Jesus' teachings. And so Jesus left saying, hey, I'm coming back, and it could be any time, a minute from now or millennia from now. And you're supposed to be doing your thing as if I would be here, like the parable with the master coming back, finding the servants drunken and so forth and so on. This is what the whole point is. We're supposed to be doing what Jesus says. Whether he comes back now or 1,000 years from now is irrelevant. We're supposed to be living our lives in that kind of using that storyline parable. Using that parable, we're supposed to be the servant doing the job good like we're supposed to, eye over our shoulder, waiting to see if the master's coming. Now, you should do it a step farther. You should do it because it's the right thing to do, and you do it because you want to. You don't have to have the master over your shoulder. And that's where Jesus' parable talks about you do a little thing, I'll give you much more later on. You do a little thing now. So, Christianity makes a whole lot of sense if you look at it from Jesus' point of view as opposed to the church point of view, which is, why, I'm not going to be in any churches. And that's fine. I'm talking here. This is where I'm supposed to be giving my 2 cents, and you can do what you want with it. Let me look to see if there's anything else I need to talk about. Any breaking... Yeah, now I want to say it's apparent that Trump is making some moves now after he's been acquitted, and possibly what he's doing. What he's doing now is because it got sidetracked because of all this other stuff. They're not going to stop, though, so I don't know. But he's starting to make some moves, so it'd be interesting to see. But one thing I've noticed, going back to the years of doing the show, and then going back even further with the years of Art Bell, is that all these people talk about stuff just out of reach. And it's getting worse. It's like it used to be where, like, when Planet X first came out, she was talking in the 90s. She, being a Nancy Leader, was talking in the 90s about Planet X. And at 2003 is when Planet X was supposed to come. So, I mean, it was years ahead of time. So when Planet X came, or didn't come, and then she, said it was a white lie from the Zeta because people were going to crash the market or something. I don't know. She came up with something. But it keeps going. And what's happening now, it's gone from being years ahead of time to like any day now. We've turned up the drama so that in 10 years, Planet X may come. Or in 20 years, or 50 years, 100 years, our planet might be inhabitable because of climate change. Now climate change has moved up to a year or two. And now it's like, oh my God, we don't do something. Now think about this. What can we possibly do so dramatically to change the climate that has taken, say, 100 years to get to where we are of carbon, according to them? What are we going to do now in a year or 2 years or 5 years to change 100 years of so-called man's pollution that did it or whatever? Even logically, their systems can't work. And then, of course, when you look at it with a critical eye, the idea of, tenths of a degree in the atmosphere where the temperature is below zero, how does that affect here? I mean, it just doesn't work. Hold on 1 second. Yes, that's right. I forgot about that. Anita's mother was ill. It was surgery. I forgot what it was. She asked for prayers. We did. Well, I don't remember what it was. How's that? Does that count? I hope God looks at my sieve of a brain and goes like, yeah, that counts. 87 years old. Yeah, I can't even. I'm at 62. I can't even imagine being 87. Even more so, my dad died when he was 44. I can't even imagine him dying at young. At the time, it didn't think like that. I was 21, but age is a funny thing. The only way you can understand age is by aging. There's no way you can tell anybody. There's no way you can understand what it's like to look back 50 years and see the difference in time. You can't explain that. You can't read it in a book. It counts. Thank you. That is 90. Wow, you got some people. Got some good genes there. Good genes, did some right things. I don't know. Are they happy they're still around to see this stuff? I don't know. Sometimes I'm wondering. Some people are just like, things are so bad now, just corrupt that it's like, like my mom. She's 87, I think it is. 86? I do the math. 86. 86, yeah, she's 86. And she is, all her friends are dead. All her friends are dead. She's like, luckily none of her kids are, but at some point, your whole world kind of goes away. If you're not in tune with the current one and working along the way, you get kind of left behind. And unfortunately, I think in my mom's case, a lot of that's the case. Kind of left behind, not really interested in anything in the current stuff. Okay, I'm starting to ramble now. And if people haven't hung up now, they will soon. So let me just take a look. I looked for... yeah. I want to say one thing more about this COVID. I get hunches. And I don't claim it's prophecy. I don't claim it's anything. But since I live in my own body, in my head, and I get a hunch and stuff, I let it roll. I think about it. I see what comes up. There's like a stream of consciousness in myself. I'll get an idea. I go, oh, yeah, and I'll just kind of let it simmer, and other stuff kind of starts to bubble up, and I start to think about it. And this is what the beauty of not watching TV, even not even music. A lot of times, just sitting there with nothing on, no sound at all, and just thinking, just allowing your thoughts to percolate. I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if in this battle with China that the CIA operative released this COVID in the area where they do have a biowarfare plan in Wuhan province. They do have one. So we will release one from there. I don't mean we. The CIA, believe me, I'm considering it those people will release something there, and it's easy to say that it came from their own facility, and they're not going to talk about it because they don't want people to know they got a facility, and so they're not going to say, oh, you planted it by our facility. Oh, facility? You have a facility for biowarfare, and you're trying to blame it on us? See how it works out? And I thought about that early on. It popped in my head that this event could have been because China is building up in the South Sea. They're buying up land in South America and Africa. There's definitely a war going on with China, and I'm not even taking sides on this. I'm just saying that there's a war going on in China, and this could have been a plan to break their back. Of course, burn down the whole house along with us in terms of the economic or even biohazard aspects of it. So, and when I get ideas like that, I don't come out and say them and go, this is it. And I just let it kind of sit there. And what'll happen is it'll fine tune. It'll evolve as more data comes up and more information or more things percolates up. Oh, my audio. Really? My audio just cut off, they said. That's very interesting. Everything's good on this end. Everything's good on this end, so. Well, what I'll do is I'll stop it now anyway, and I'll upload. I'll re-upload the file to make sure it's all there. So since it's not, okay. Right. Well, whatever's there, it's probably still. Now they refreshed it and it's there. Whatever it's there, you could probably reread it. I was just talking about, and it's interesting though. I was talking about my little theory that the alphabet agency may have released the bug in the vicinity of a place where they have a bug machine, a bug plan, and trying to hit him. So it's just interesting that happened at that point. But anyway, I don't want to get too wild on it. But again, the whole thing is, in this point, is about 15 seconds. Well, I'll check to see if the audio is there. Let me just say it again and see if it happens anyway. And if people are listening, they heard it the first time. I'm sorry, but I said I had an idea. Just kind of popped in my head early on that the CAA or somebody like that, that they planted this release in China, knowing that there is a biofacility there, a biowarfare facility there, so that China can't say, "Hey, you did that. You were trying. You did it pretending it was our place," because then he'd have to deal with that and doing it. So that it ends up, of course, it'd be just like them to do something like that, which would bring out world economic problems, and it would spread around and kill all these people. That'd be just like something like that. But anyway, let me cut it at that. I gotta get ready here. I gotta going out to southern Indiana tomorrow. And okay, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync Radio network of stations.